Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of Vesuvius Town Council, Tuesday, July the 15th, 2025 at 2 p.m. in council chambers. So I will first off look at the approval of the agenda, and are there any late items? No. No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Chong, all in favor? Thank you. And the adoption of some minutes, that would be the regular open minutes from June the 24th, 2025, and the special open minutes from July the 8th, 2025. We have a motion to adopt those, please. Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. And we will now go down to water matters and Water Districts 8 and 9 financial accounts. And so for Water District cash requirements to July the 15th, 2025 are in the amount of $7,893.90. Thank you. Councillor Moreira is moving option 1. Councillor Appleby is seconding that. All in favor. Thank you, everyone. And next is the Strategic Priorities Fund grant application, Vesuvius Water Treatment Plant. Mr. Madsen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As council knows, we've been actively working on the the preliminary water treatment plant analysis. And this grant came up through UBCM, maximum $7 million. And one of the categories towards it is water treatment projects. So thought it would be prudent to apply for this grant and see if it gets us one step closer towards building a water treatment plant.
So what you're looking at is that staff submitted an application for grant funding towards the Vesuvius Water Treatment Plant project through the Union of BC Municipality Strategic Priorities Fund 2025 intake, and that council supports the project and commits to provide overall grant management and support any cost overruns. That's correct? Council. Yes, Councillor Chong.
Thank you. How specific do we have to be with this grant application? Like with 7 million, would it be more prudent to allocate it towards maybe just the intake pump, like the intake rebuild, as opposed to the entire project as a whole?
Go ahead.
We definitely can break it into parts, and we've spoken about kind of breaking it into phases or parts. The problem, I think, is some of the granting authorities are going to be more inclined to, they're not going to want to just fund like a pipe or something. They're going to want to participate and be part of the bigger project. But we could definitely do it as sort of part A being the intake, part B being the transmission or supply line, and part C being the plant. And see where that takes us with them. But if we put it all under a larger umbrella of the water treatment plant, which is inclusive of the intake, I feel like it would be more successful in the grand scheme of things.
Maybe I'll just add one piece, and like
Yep.
Mr. Madsen's meeting with the province regularly, and so we're in continual communication with municipal affairs on our specific project, and we've actually talked about splitting the project and that type of thing, and we're very cognizant of the whole rule of once you start a project, you can't qualify for additional grants. So as we're doing this, we're going to be very careful in how we word it and continue to work with municipal affairs to ensure that we don't jeopardize the bigger ask. So I think it's just important to indicate that, we're working with them so we don't jeopardize the bigger ask.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Because the concern would be if we are successful in the 7 mil, would that take us out of contention for the bigger grant funds, like for like the 40, 30 mil ones? Like,
so through your worship, that's why we're working with municipal affairs. If they see that it will jeopardize that, obviously we're not likely going to proceed. So that's why we're working with them. Like say, I think it's monthly. We actually meet with municipal affairs to ensure that we don't cross that line. If we see that we may cross that line, No, we have a bunch of other projects we could probably ask for this 7 million on.
And so there's quite a form to fill out, which has all the specifics on it. So, absolutely, I mean, seems to me that we need to apply for anything that we can. Counselor King?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity to apply, but also there's an opportunity to apply for two different grants. Is there a reason we're only applying for one?
To date, we only looked at the capital stream. The other one would be sort of doing your assessments or smaller, like preliminary design type streams. I believe you can only apply for one grant under the capital portion of it.
One specific building.
Building capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the building capacity is more like doing your asset management plans and those sort of things.
Okay, so, do we have a recommendation? Is there somebody like to make a motion? Counselor King, moving the recommended motion. Is there a seconder? Counselor Bennett, all in favor? Thank you very much. And thank you for doing that. And I see there's a deadline. It has to be in by September, so we got to get that done, right? Okay, thank you. And we'll ask Mr. Madsen again to talk about properties within municipal boundary serviced by the Osoyoos Water District system.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is follow-up to the June 24th Committee of the Whole, whereby the Villas Strata was given an exception or exemption, I guess, for the 2025 year for water restrictions. In that, just for 1 year, and then the follow-up to that was for staff to return to council with a report on how we're going to start looking at the town or the properties in town that are still connected to the agricultural or water district system. In a nutshell, or on the first part with the villas, we're asking council to sort of give us that sort of, or direct us to tell them they need to start working on it for the 2026 year. We're anticipating there's about 10 to 20 properties in town connected to both properties. It's not as simple, both at the policy level and pragmatically, to pull people off of both or put them on one system or the town system. With other things that are underway, like our conservation plan, asset management plan for the water district, looking at our water rates, etc. And so we're just asking council just to maintain status quo. We'll finish the water meter project, collect data, and get all this information so we can provide a more information to council to make a decision.
So what you're suggesting is that that we inform the villas that they should prepare for water restriction exemption to cease in 1 year, so June 2026.
Correct.
Right? And we will continue with the status quo until we have more information. Is that correct as
Yeah.
well? Okay. So are those two separate things? And so they have to be voted on separately?
But
Combine them? Okay, thank you. So 1 and 2 then, right? Options 1 and 2. I read the second one first and the first one second. We're okay with that? Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Chong. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay. And next is am I correct? Is it the housing agreement or have I missed something? Nope, operational services yard. Sorry, I don't have enough of these little tags in here to find them all. So that would be Mr. Madsen again, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So during the 2025 budget process, I think it was a carry forward project from last year, was the inclusion of $100,000 to start looking at the design of an upgrade for more space at the operational services yard, with the construction to take place in 2029 via borrowing. I started looking at the space that we have in the yard and some options to get us up and running sooner with, trying to get all of our staff into one location, et cetera. And a lot of municipalities are going to modular trailers. and the construction trailers. So I reached out to a couple of vendors. One of them got back to me and they gave me a couple options, both to purchase and to lease. Both have their pros and cons. But essentially this would give us about 4 to 5 more offices, a proper meeting room up there, which we don't currently have. We've got a lunchroom, but at that, and we're still short on things like locker rooms and stuff like that. They're not quite big enough. Cost wise, to purchase, it would be under with all the service connections and everything and delivery, it would be under $300,000 compared to the $1.6 million total price tag we had in before, and allows us and sorry, the leasing option would be about $3,750 per month for a minimum 3 years. We can put cladding on it to make it look like the rest of the building, just so it doesn't stick out like a trailer. And it'll allow us sort of a maybe a more short-term fix while we look forward or just really focus on the water treatment plant over the next few years, without overcommitting ourselves.
And did you have a question? Go ahead.
I think
know.
this is a great idea, to save money in the bigger picture. If we pass this, if we move the work yard to future down the road, is this building movable?
Yes, typically these are just put on blocks and then you'd need a crane to put it loaded back up on a truck and move it, which would have some cost, but it's not fixed to the ground.
And there's sewer hookups and everything for it? Or you've identified a location? Is
Yeah.
that included in the cost, all the
Yep.
in-house? Yeah, okay.
And so what you're recommending is that we purchase this rather than lease, because after we have dealt with it this way and we have something else, we likely have to deal with this building at some point, and it might be a usable modular trailer to use if we have to move out of this one. Who knows how long this building will last, but not that long. So what we're looking for is a recommendation that council direct staff to proceed to purchase a modular office complex and make the required budget adjustment to accommodate. You moving that, Councillor King? Is there a seconder, Councillor Chong? Any other questions on this one? Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much. And says Mr. Garish, but I'm assuming it's Ms. Duong, below market sales program, Southeast Meadowlark Plan area. Go ahead, please, Ms. Duong.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yes, I'm glad that we found some sort of workaround. It'll still be a little hard to read within council chambers, but
Sure.
that's okay.
All right.
I'll try to run through it as best as I can. So this particular item relates to the near market affordable housing program within the town. Now, the subject area that we're talking about is the Southeast Meadowlark area, specifically phase 2. So that includes a few parcels along the east side of Meadowlark Drive, as well as those parcels along, I believe that's Wood Duck Way. In the case of this particular item, we are looking though at lots 4 and 25. So this area is designated under the OCP as low density residential with the corresponding zoning of small scale multi-unit residential. That's the RS1 zone. The parcels are within the urban containment area, and as mentioned, this is within the Southeast Meadowlark area, which was previously subject to the Southeast Meadowlark Plan, which was repealed back in 2024. However, the near market affordable housing program remains active. So just a little bit of background on this. One of the key objectives of the Southeast Meadowlark area plan was to include a strong affordable housing component for moderate income working families. And this was to be implemented and achieved through the registration of housing agreements with developers in the area. The town correspondingly had adopted a policy, that's PLA 017, for the near market affordable housing program guidelines, and it outlines the various details of the program, including program applicability, guidelines set out for developers, so looking at the proportion of the units that were to be set, as affordable housing units, pricing of those units, as well as the mechanism being the housing agreements. In terms of guidelines for recipients, it does also outline eligibility criteria for those recipients, as well as use and resale restrictions. So as the Southeast Meadowlark area is largely within the agricultural land reserve, the rollout of this program has occurred in phases. And this would occur as lands are excluded from the ALR, then subsequently rezoned and subdivided and developed for single family or low density residential purposes. And as council is aware, the ALC did grant a conditional exclusion back in 2010. And amongst other things, they did require that 15% of the units be provided as affordable housing in accordance with the Southeast Meadowlark Plan. Now, in terms of the status of the program, phase 1 is complete, so it's been built out already, and the housing agreements have been registered on 4 of those lots. Phase 2 remains ongoing, so it's largely undeveloped at this point, and some lots have been developed. And just flagging that the presentation has been minimized. It just needs to be on presenter view. Thank you. Oops. Okay, and then phase 3 additionally is ongoing and has actually just received final subdivision approval and is the subject of the next item on the agenda. So in terms of the statutory context, the Local Government Act sets out that a local government may enter into a housing agreement by bylaw. And the town did adopt Housing Agreement Bylaw 1343 back in 2018 in order to facilitate compliance with that affordable housing component of the Southeast Meadowlark Plan, as well as the ALC's conditions for phase 1. So this bylaw essentially authorizes the town to enter into a housing agreement for those lands. Now, with respect to phase 2, it is our understanding that in order to have allowed the subdivision to proceed for phase 2 in the absence of a registered housing agreement, a statutory covenant was actually used as a tool. And so it was registered against the titles of the parcels for the affordable housing program. And so that included lots 2, 3, and 4. So the subdivision proceeded without the housing agreement having been originally registered at that point. And the covenant actually stipulates that the owner must not sell the affected property or properties until a housing agreement is registered. So it kind of kicked the can down the road to when the properties were being sold as opposed to doing it on the front end. Now, council did consider this previously back in May 2023. So council had supported a request from the property owner being the developer at that time to transfer a statutory covenant, from lot 4 to lot 24. However, when we did review those titles, it indicated that the transfer of the covenant didn't actually occur. So the covenant remains registered against lot 4 at this time. Now, a request has been submitted by the property owner to the town seeking the transfer of that statutory covenant from lot 4 now to lot 25. And this would occur through the cancellation of the covenant that's currently registered on lot 4 and subsequently registering the covenant against lot 25 instead. In terms of considerations, we do see that, as mentioned, the registration of the statutory covenant was ultimately an interim measure that was intended to facilitate the subdivision of the parent parcel of the lots by ultimately deferring the registration of a housing agreement. And that subdivision was completed back in 2022. So it's been nearly 3 years at this point, and the covenant is seen to have served its intended purpose. So while there is that option, of course, to transfer the covenant, from our perspective, the more appropriate alternative at this time would simply be to discharge that covenant that's on lot 4 and register the housing agreement against lot 5 if the intent in the future is to have that housing agreement apply to that lot anyways. And we would see this occurring as an amendment to the Housing Agreement Bylaw 1343 to essentially add that housing agreement as a separate schedule to the Housing Agreement Bylaw to authorize council to sign on to that agreement. So with that in mind, we are asking for council's direction at this time, whether or not to proceed or approve the app or the property owner's request to move that covenant or deny it, and we are recommending denial.
Shannon, can I ask, the statutory covenant that we did for the first set of Southeast Meadowlark was 15% of the units had to be offered at 15% below market value. And that was in fact carried out, and that was done correctly. And actually, because we were new at it, it took a couple of adjustments through that time, but it was completed. My assumption is that from what you've said, that the ALR would like to see that same covenant continued for section plot 2 and 3, which is just coming on board. Am I correct that that is part of the agreement, that taking it out of the ALR, that continues?
Yes, so the main stipulation that the commission had made was that there was consistency with the Southeast Meadowlark plan, and that's what outlined that 15% rule for affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. So you're recommending that we not apply to this request from the developer, and that the transfer does not occur. Okay. Council, go ahead,
Just a
Councillor King.
question. If this was to move forward and we pass it, is there a chance you'll actually build a house on the property then?
As I understand it, there is already a house on lot 25. So essentially, it's just that the housing agreement needs to be registered onto that lot so that the stipulations of the affordable housing provisions actually apply to it.
So on the first one, the yellow ones, so lots 2, 3, and 4 all have, and there's one in between there. And I can't read what it says. Oh, road allowance. Okay, so 2, 3, and 4 were done with the 15%. And instead of 4, they wanted to change it to 25, and you're recommending that it stay where it is at this point because lot 25 is in section B of this it's not part of part A, is it?
So not necessarily that
Oh.
we would be against so we wouldn't necessarily be against discharging the covenant on lot 4. That would be okay with us. It's just more so that ultimately the goal of that covenant is to eventually register a housing agreement. So instead of shifting the covenant at this point, it seems more appropriate to us to just register the housing agreement.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is lot 25 occupied? Is it one that's for sale right now?
It should not be because really the covenant, if we're applying the housing agreement to that lot, it would be that it would need to be sold at that at the less than 15% rate
Right.
under market, right? So in theory, it would not be sold until the housing agreement is actually placed on title.
Okay, must be the other two next to it then. And then lot 4, there's nobody in that one either?
I don't believe so.
It is for sale? Yeah. Okay.
Did you go ahead, please?
Keep.
So why use statutory covenants period and not have housing agreements on the lots that require them? Was it just an easier way or like?
So I can't speak for, necessarily the decisions that were made at that time in relation to the covenant. But really we see the intent of using the covenant at that time was to allow the subdivision to proceed and allow them to move forward with that part of the process without the housing agreement. I think it is certainly favorable to do the housing agreement prior to the subdivision taking place because it kind of keeps it as a bit of a cleaner process. However, yes, it was just a tool to allow the subdivision to proceed.
Go ahead.
So I guess my real question, on lot 25, there's a house there. How can he sell it if there's a covenant on it?
So the covenant would just stipulate the terms that the property owner would have to adhere to, right? It essentially sets out the use and resale restrictions, as well as the pricing. So you can still sell it. It's just that the covenant that we're talking about right now with the statutory covenant, it's a no sale covenant that the property owner currently cannot sell the property that has the covenant on it until a housing agreement is registered. So that's kind of the way that the tool is being used, is it forces the housing agreement to be registered on title before the property owner sells it.
So I know that the 4 lots that were in the first section of the Meadowlark, they could not be, they agreed to, and they did a form which filled out that they had 15% market value. They could not sell that property for 5 years. And I believe that the 5 years is up. I don't know whether any of them have sold or not, but they now, that is a legal part of it. Would that be similar to what you're looking at here as well?
Yes, that's outlined in
In
the
the,
policy. So yes,
Okay.
we would be drafting, or a housing agreement would need to be drafted in accordance with that policy that the town has set.
thank you. So, council, what is your thoughts on this one? We're not sure. I do agree with what Ms. Duong has said. I think that that the work for all of this was done in the first Meadowlark building complex, and it worked well. And I do think that that would make sense for the other two. Anybody? Go ahead.
With option 2, if we deny the transfer, I guess the second half of that would be the housing agreement would then be placed on lot 25 then.
Yes, we would need to work with the property owner in that case to review a housing agreement, which would eventually be brought to council through the bylaw amendment process to the current housing agreement bylaw. So there's actually a similar item that's coming forward like right after this one that kind of shows how that process works. But yeah, essentially we actually need to, by bylaw, provide the authorizations for the town to sign on to that agreement.
Move option 2.
Thank you. So it's moved option 2, which is to deny. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Poderica, did you?
Sorry, 2
Oh.
seconds here.
Councillor King has seconded that. Did you have a question?
No, I was
Okay.
making sure that was the option. That's where I was going to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
All right, so I will now call the question that the request for the statutory covenant, my glasses on, limiting the sale, transfer, rent, lease, or disposal of any interest in the land described at Lot 4, Plan EPP 12182, District Lot 2450S, prior to the filing of a housing agreement in the Land Title Office against the land be transferred to Lot 25, be denied. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Wong. And so now we are looking at the housing agreement at 10105 74th Avenue. And when she's got it up there, you can
Great.
okay,
Thank you.
good, thank you.
Sorry, you guys are hearing a lot of me today. So again, this item is very similar to the last one. It is in relation to the near market affordable housing program. This one, however, relates to phase 3 of the Southeast Meadowlark development. Specifically, this is located at 10105 74th Avenue. Just like phase 2, it is designated as low density residential under the OCP bylaw and zoned small scale multi-unit residential. The property is located within the urban containment boundary, and then just some additional details that relate to this particular request. They recently were provided final subdivision approval, which was granted on June 27th for a 19 lot subdivision. And again, this is located within the former Southeast Meadowlark plan area. So I won't go into extreme detail with this again, just because we've already gone through it. But sorry, just cycling through some things here. So as I mentioned before, most of the properties within the Southeast Meadowlark area, which haven't been developed yet, are within the agricultural land reserve. And as mentioned, the ALC did require that 15% rule be applied in terms of the provision of affordable housing in accordance with the Southeast Meadowlark Plan. Now, specifically in this case, in order to address the ALC's affordable housing condition, the property owner will be registering a Section 219 no build covenant, which stipulates that until a housing agreement is filed against the property owner is not to sell, transfer, rent, or lease, or otherwise dispose of any interest in the lands, and the town will not issue a building permit for the construction of any improvements on the lands. So this covenant was actually accepted by the ALC as meeting that condition, and so the property has already been excluded from the ALR, hence its subdivision approval. Now, in order to proceed with the development of Phase 3, it's being proposed to register a housing agreement to apply to lots 10, 11, and 12 of that property. And as mentioned, a local government can enter into a housing agreement by bylaw only. So we are proposing that we amend the housing agreement bylaw, which currently exists, and use that as a mechanism to authorize the town to enter into a housing agreement for Phase 3. Ultimately, what we're proposing is a restructuring of the housing agreement bylaw that we already have to act as an authorizing bylaw for multiple housing agreements, instead of having to do individual housing agreement bylaws for every single development that eventually comes forward in relation to the Southeast Meadowlark area. So ultimately, what we would see happening is that as we continue to get development proposals in this area and lands become excluded from the ALR, we would be simply adding agreements as schedules to the bylaw through the bylaw amendment process. So in reviewing the drafted housing agreement, we are satisfied that this is or has been drafted in accordance with our policy. The proposed housing agreement is to be registered against 3 of the 19 lots, which is seen to represent that 15% proportion of the overall development. And upon registration of that housing agreement against those lots, that Section 219 no build covenant with the ALC, which was used to allow the property to be excluded from the ALR, would be discharged, which would subsequently allow the town to issue building permits for those lots. So with this in mind, we would like to seek council's direction as to whether to give first, second, and third readings to the amendment bylaw, or that bylaw not proceed. But we are recommending option 1 there.
Thank you. And if we did that, would there need to be a public meeting or hearing on this issue or not?
No.
No, there wouldn't. This is one of the new ones. Okay, fair enough. Council, anybody like to make a recommendation? Councillor Poderica.
Your worship, I'd move option 1 that it be read first, second, third time.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Chong. All in favor? Thank you very much. That makes it kind of consistent with all 3 phases, so that's a good thing. Thank you very much, Ms. Duong. And now we are on to, it's you again, Shannon. The zoning bylaw amendment application number Z2502, 3621 Lakeshore Drive. Go ahead, please.
All right, thank you so much. So this particular item relates to a rezoning application at 3621 Lakeshore Drive. It may be familiar to this council, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So this property is designated as low density residential under the OCP and zoned small scale multi-unit residential under the zoning bylaw. The parcel's just over 2,200 square meters in area and is located within the urban containment area. Interestingly, this property was located within the ALR. It's located actually within kind of a historic block of the ALR that had actually been used for agricultural that had been used for residential purposes historically, but ended up within the reserve. So it was excluded from the ALR back in 2024. And that was actually for the purpose of undertaking a 2-lot subdivision. So the proposal that the applicant is requesting the rezoning in relation to is a proposal to subdivide the property into 2 lots of 665 square meters and 0.157 hectares. So that's just under 1,600 square meters. A bit of application history: on August 9th, 2024, preliminary layout review was issued by the town for the subdivision of the property as it is currently being proposed. With PLRs, they outline all the different conditions that are required for subdivision approval, and those would be based on the bylaw requirements that are in place at the time of issuance. However, on September 24th, 2024, the zoning bylaw 1395, of course, was adopted, which repealed the former zoning bylaw. So the Local Government Act does actually take this into consideration and has a specific regulation which provides a 12-month period where regulations of a zoning bylaw that is adopted would not apply to in-stream applications. So in this case, we're looking at zoning bylaw 1395 not applying necessarily, and the applicant would therefore be able to complete the subdivision under the provisions of zoning bylaw 1085. However, the applicant would only be benefiting from this provision under the Local Government Act where the proposal actually had met all the different provisions of the zoning bylaw at that time. So that's largely because you can't vary provisions of a former zoning bylaw that's no longer in place. So just taking a comparison of the assessment that we did for the PLR under 1085 and 1395. Under 1085, the proposal itself met the minimum parcel sizes for subdivision. However, proposed lot 2 did not meet the minimum parcel width of 18 meters and was just shy of it at 16.63 meters. And under zoning bylaw 1395, the minimum parcel size is met for proposed lot 1 as it exceeds 1,000 square meters, which is the minimum parcel size for subdivision. However, proposed lot 2 now no longer meets that minimum parcel size because it's at 665 square meters. On the other hand, we did change the minimum parcel width requirements. So now both lots are actually consistent with minimum parcel width requirements. So because there is that deviation or that inconsistency with either of the bylaws there, the proposal does have to meet the provisions of zoning bylaw 1395. So the proposed amendment under this application is to amend the zoning of the property from small-scale multi-unit residential to small-scale multi-unit residential site-specific. Specifically, that provision would reduce the minimum parcel size for subdivision from 1,000 square meters to 665 square meters. So just some considerations to make when considering your options. The subject property, as I mentioned, was previously excluded from the ALR with the intent to undertake the subdivision as it is currently proposed, and council had supported that application at the time and authorized it to proceed to the commission. So this rezoning would facilitate the proposed subdivision and is therefore seen to reflect council's previous decision in supporting the exclusion. Additionally, the proposal was largely consistent with the former zoning bylaw, with that exception of the minimum parcel width requirement, and the applicant has been working to complete the different conditions of the PLR up until the change in bylaw. That being said, we do recognize that the introduction of that 1,000 square meter minimum parcel size under the new zoning bylaw had been to accommodate the new small-scale multi-unit residential density requirements. So looking at 3 to 4 parcels per, or 3 to 4 dwelling units per parcel, and that size was actually reflective of the minimum parcel size that we had applied to the multifamily residential zones, which typically would accommodate 3+ units under the former zoning bylaw. Ultimately, the increase in minimum parcel size was to ensure that new lots have enough building area when you're considering other things like setbacks, building height, and parcel coverage. Additionally, the OCP bylaw does discourage subdivision as a form of infill densification in those existing low density neighborhoods, really in recognition of the fact that larger parcels tend to have more potential to accommodate larger or higher residential densities, and fragmenting those lots would reduce the overall potential. So in summary, we are supporting the proposal as it is seen to be consistent with the previous direction that was set by council previously when the ALR exclusion application had originally come forward. And we are seeking your direction at this time as to whether to proceed with giving first, second, and third reading to the amendment bylaw or to deny it at this time. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor King.
I support this. I'm just looking at attachment 2. If this gets split on your lot 1, am I hearing he could actually put more houses on that?
Yes, that was my question too. In other words, could this be subdivided further? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
no,
meaning?
It's got passed now. Could they
Yeah.
come back again and subdivide?
That is correct. However, they would have to effectively cut through an existing home. So
Isn't that piece on there the driveway that they've allowed for like a fire truck or whatever? But isn't that a driveway to get to lot 1 coming off Lakeshore Drive?
yes, that would be an
Yes.
access strip to access the back of proposed lot 1, but that strip is part of proposed lot 1.
Okay. And would lot 2 have its own separate driveway, or would it come off the driveway from lot 1?
I'm not certain as to the details of how they would access the site. However, it's quite likely they'd be able to get frontage on Lakeshore Drive.
I'm sorry, I can't take anything from the, yeah, thank you. And the other thing is the floodplain management regulations. Does that apply to the entire property? Lot 2 is likely at a lower elevation than lot 1. Is that what, can you explain that?
Yes, so the floodplain area appears to only affect a small portion of the lots, really like closer to Lake Shore Drive, but isn't seen to affect the entire property.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I move option 1. If we take the second, third reading.
Did you want? Okay. Are you seconding it? No. So it's been moved. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Chung is seconding that. Now, is there anybody that had any questions or concerns on this now? No, you're okay. All right, so I will call the question. All in favor? Against? No? Thank you very much. Okay. We will now look at the next report, and that is the development cost charges, and that is Ms. Duong again.
Only. Great, thank you. I have the benefit this time of having Anthony on the line from True Engineering, but I will be presenting this
Okay.
part of it, and he's mostly here for questions, but it's okay.
Yeah, I think Steve is there as well, so Mr.
Oh,
Underwood.
perfect.
Just so you can see.
Great, so we'll direct all questions to them at the end, but I'll go ahead and get started with my presentation. So just a statutory context, the Local Government Act sets out that by bylaw, a local government is able to impose development cost charges or DCCs on every person who obtains either a subdivision approval or a building permit that authorizes the construction, alteration, or extension of a building or structure. So DCCs can be imposed for the purpose of providing funds to assist with the capital costs of providing, constructing, altering, and expanding a number of different types of services such as sewage, water, drainage, fire protection, police, highway, solid waste and recycling facilities, as well as providing and improving parkland. Just with respect to the DCC bylaw update project, I know that council had previously had a presentation on this in May at committee, but I'll just give a quick overview. So in 2023, True Engineering Limited was engaged to complete a technical appendix in order to support the update of the town's DCCs through a DCC bylaw update project. And the technical appendix does take into consideration the new zoning bylaw that was recently adopted, as well as all the regulatory updates made on the provincial level that relate to small scale multi-unit housing, as well as the housing needs report that was completed just this year. And as mentioned on May 13th, 2025, at the committee of the whole meeting, council did initiate bylaw 1394, However, with the amendment of the commercial DCCs being reduced to $85. Now, with respect to public process, we talked a little bit about, public consultation that's associated with zoning bylaws and things like that. However, there's no statutory requirements for public consultation in relation to the adoption of a DCC bylaw. That being said, the Inspector of Municipalities does have the discretion to refuse approval of a DCC bylaw where it believes that the prescribed DCCs are excessive or could deter development or discourage construction of reasonably priced housing. So as a means of addressing these issues on the front end, public consultation was undertaken by the town leading up to the consideration of the bylaw today. And this public consultation process included the creation of a project webpage where we kept the technical appendix, the various reports that have gone forward to council, et cetera. We had also sent out or posted newspaper advertisements, sent out notifications on e-news. We had undertaken public information meeting notifications specifically to development companies in town, as they would typically be the ones that would be affected. And we did hold the in-person public information meeting on June 17th, and that was attended by 2 members of the public. So with respect to the draft bylaw today, this was informed by the technical appendix that True had prepared, and just some key highlights of the DCC program. It involves the use of a 10-year revolving program. It had assumed an average growth rate of 3.6%, which was set out in the OCP bylaw, as well as a development infill rate of 25%. The DCC program utilizes municipal-wide levies, which means that across the municipality, the same rates would be charged for different use classes. So there aren't special rates that are being applied to certain areas of the town. There is a 1% municipal assist factor that applies to all DCCs. With that adjustment that was made for the commercial DCCs, which I'll talk a little bit about later as well. And DCCs would be collected at building permit submission. So just some key changes to highlight with this bylaw as compared to the current DCC bylaw. Overall, it does represent an increase in DCC rates. I know some of this was discussed during the committee meeting, but again, just as a summary, there was the current DCC bylaw that's being proposed does propose the removal of DCCs for RV parks and campground sites, as there's no apparent trigger in those cases, as they are not typically formed through subdivision, and there aren't building permit requirements typically for those sites. The new DCC bylaw introduces criteria that are set out for waiving or reducing DCCs for eligible development. So, for example, not-for-profit rental housing. Additionally, this bylaw introduces criteria to allow a developer to consider the payment of DCCs in installments within 2 years of the charge being assessed in accordance with provincial regulations. And additionally, it introduces a new DCC for solid waste facilities with those funds collected to be applied to a design, operations, and closure plan for the Osoyoos landfill. Of note, there have been some revisions to the bylaw since the previous council consideration. Specifically, and as mentioned, as directed by council, there was a reduction to the commercial DCCs from $110.94 to $84.96. Similarly, there was a reduction in institutional DCCs from $108.25 to $84.96. And this is based on the DCC best practices guidelines, which shows that population factors tend to be the same or similar for commercial and institutional uses. So it made sense to kind of match those up. Additionally, there was a reduction of commercial accommodation unit DCCs from $7,284.58 to $6,352.89. And that reduction was based on the fact that it's tied into commercial uses, right? So that calculation for the commercial accommodation unit DCC was based on the commercial uses. So because the commercial DCC was also reduced, it would reduce this one. And lastly, there was a reduction of the industrial use DCC from $65.74 to $65.67, which is pretty minor. It just corrects a discrepancy in summation error, which didn't include the recycling facilities and solid waste management DCC rate of 7 cents. So in terms of next steps, if council does support first, second, and third readings of this bylaw, the Local Government Act requires that the bylaws be approved by the Inspector of Municipalities. So if council does support this, we would be forwarding a copy of the bylaw to the inspector for review and approval. However, it's not known how long it will take them to review and approve it. So we are now seeking council's direction with respect to the DCC bylaw 1394. We are recommending that it be read a first, second, and third time. Other option that's available to council, of course, is to maintain the status quo and not update that bylaw that currently stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. So my assumption is you said it could take quite a while to have this okayed. So if we did first, second, and third reading, we could be waiting months to have it come back again. Is that what that means?
Yes, I'm not sure if Anthony or Steve would be able to comment on their experience with other DCC bylaws and the length of time that it's taken for other local governments to receive responses.
Is Steve or on there, or Anthony? Could one of you answer that, please?
I think the turnaround time we've been experiencing recently is in the 6-month range from submission to getting approval back.
Go ahead.
Member, question for Steve, on your presentation on page 6, what category does the airport come under?
Well, let Anthony, for DCC for a building permit for a hangar?
Yeah. Good guess.
I would have to look up the zoning for the airport, but I believe it's a commercial zoning. So it'd be a commercial DCC.
Okay.
Do we know it's actually commercial zone?
Here, let me look it up quickly
Shannon's
here.
looking it up.
Thank you, Shannon.
So it's got a special airport zoning, and I just have to go to the airport zone, and that is actually administrative and institutional.
Sorry, that would be the case then. On that note, the commercial and the institutional rate are the same.
Thank you. So, council, what is your recommendation on this one?
Recommendation.
That it
With the recommendation, first, second, third.
first, second, and third reading?
Yep.
Mhm. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Chong is seconding it. Are there any questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. And that seems to have dealt with that one. Thank
Can I
you.
join more questions?
Go ahead.
Steve, do these ever get turned down when they're presented to the province?
Often they do get kicked back for clarification, or yeah, they sometimes challenge the way things are calculated. I'm not expecting that in this case. We followed their recommended guide quite closely, so I'm not expecting pushback, but you never know. Sometimes they catch something that they want more clarification on.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shannon, for getting all those organized today and presenting them. And thank you to Steve and Anthony for joining the conversation. All right, the next thing on our agenda is the reports from committees and the COW. So from the Committee of the Whole meeting today, July 15th, 2025, we have in fact 8 different motions that we will need to deal with. And so the first one, that the zoning bylaw section of metal storage containers and associated municipal ticketing information bylaw fines be reviewed and reported back to council. So could I have a mover and a seconder on that one, please? Thank you. Poderica and Chong, all in favor. Thank you. That council approve the airport master plan and financial analysis report and supports the development. Moved, seconded, all in favor? And I was against on that one. The third one, that council authorizes the notice of intention to enter into a management agreement for the Osoyoos Airport for a one-year term on the condition that the Osoyoos Airport Development Society is in good standing and that section C and D be removed from the agreement. We have a motion on that, please. Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. Number 4, that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 1375.09 be initiated. Councillor Potterica, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. The next one, that the committee direct administration to work with the senior center and cover 50% of the estimated $4,700 cost related to the sewer line repair. Councillor Chong, Councillor King, all in favor. Thank you. That council support the use of 12,500 of the RMI Public Art and Heritage carryover funding for the museum's interpretive signage, and that the remaining 12,500 be considered by the Grant Evaluation Committee for a community event organized by Wide Arts National Association. Councillor King,
Your
I'm
Worship,
sorry.
just one piece on that. So within the current RMI strategy, that 25,000 was to be allocated to arts and heritage. And so I just, when it goes back to the committee, may just want to really look at that definition as they're contemplating how that grant's going to go. So I just think we've got to look at that definition, or we have to make an amendment to the RMI strategy.
No.
So it may open.
We don't want to be doing that, not another one. So the committee is going to have to look carefully at this when they do their consideration. Is that correct? Is that what that means?
And maybe I could just. So the motion recommended by the committee this morning talked about an event. So we didn't have enough time to totally look into it. But I do know, unfortunately, within our strategy right now, what we've provided to the province, we talk about it being, say, arts and heritage.
Okay.
The events are in a different line.
Okay.
We can do amendments to the strategy. I mean, it's kind of complicated now because we're putting in a new strategy and we're already having problems with changing the things from before. So you can keep it like that, but I just.
Or was there another?
So from an administration perspective, it is definitely easier if it was done to something that is more in the arts and heritage type grouping, which the interpretive signs do, murals do. That's more along that line. An event is that other category that we allocate $100,000 to.
So Zach made the motion this morning. Can he adjust that now or not?
We're at the point that we're taking it from a recommendation. We're just currently taking it from a recommendation to a resolution. So we're free to change it at this point.
Okay.
I think, well, I guess the group bring forward the idea of large puppets, and that would be under the arts instead of an event.
Zach was the one who made the motion. So Zach, would you like to
Maybe.
change or?
Thank you, Worship. Maybe for some further clarification, I know what is also as part of that recommendation, obviously, is it does meet the RMI criteria, and maybe it allows committee to go back, or that committee to go back to WANA to propose that they come forward with a recommendation that reflects the arts and heritage aspect of it specifically as part of their criteria, in addition to meeting the RMI requirements.
Okay. And who second? Well, we don't have. We will let Zach, are you going to second this particular motion today? And we'll change that one that the grant committee would go back to the Wide Arts National Association and make sure that it fit the criteria, whatever they decided with their 12,500. Okay. And so you're moving that. Jim, are you seconding that? Okay. All in favor? Okay, thanks. Does that solve that? Does that help or not?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Chip
Yeah.
Brought it up this morning. I was kind of sleeping on the switch here, so.
No, I know, we have to, sober second thought, we have to think about these things. All right, number 7 is that council approve the amended strategic priorities chart with the following changes to attachment 3. Removing the aquatic center feasibility update from the advocacy partnership section and adding Chamber of Commerce to the advocacy partnership section, and reinstating Resort Municipality Initiative Plan 2025 to 2028 to the CAO section. So we need a motion for that. Councillor Poderica, Councillor Chong, all in favor. Thank you. And the last one was that council approve the infrastructure strategy as contained in attachment 2. Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, you okay? All in favor. Thank you. All right, now we will move on to, I believe, the CAO report. Oh, sorry, hang on. Can you, we've got to go back to this one then? Pardon me? I had them all changed because they added stuff. That's why I'm confused here. All right, we're going to go back to here and I see reports of committees, and that would be the airport advisory minutes from June the 17th, 2025. Could we have a motion, please, to receive that for information? Councillor Poderica, Councillor King, all in favor. Thank you. Now, sorry about that, because this page was replaced but then it was replaced. Okay. Now we'll go back to the CAO report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, first thing I just want to thank not only the volunteers, but specifically all the staff that contributed directly and indirectly in regards to the Canada Day festivities. I think it was a great event, and I know there's a lot of the team members that put a lot of effort into this, and just want to thank them. So I thought the day was absolutely fantastic. Other things that are going on, the refrigeration system, the Sun Bowl will be firing up on July 18th, and first user group in there will be July 28th, and it's pretty busy for August with summer camps and skating club schools, minor hockey conditioning camps. So there's a ton of things going on at the end of August, or within the month of August. The indoor roller skating was another success. It was held on July 5th. Family Splash Days coming up July 24th. There'll be free hot dogs and drinks from Nesters, and Rotary's also sponsoring and doing some of the work with regards to that. And there's also going to be a bouncy castle there for those to enjoy. Just a bit of a heads up, Terry Fox Run is scheduled for September 14th, and it's the 45th anniversary. We have there's been quite a few fires lately. We had some smoke yesterday, a bit of a windstorm. So I just wanted to inform council and the community that RD West, in collaboration with the town, are still working on things with regards to evacuation plans and all that type of stuff. There's lots of work going on. And this Saturday, July 19th, there will be the fire department's fire truck there at the farmers market, as well as you may recall about a month or so ago, we passed working with the RDOS on a hazard, risk, and vulnerability study. So this is an opportunity for people to talk about their experiences with disasters. So gathering input as well as doing some education on disasters. Tax period's over, and I guess kind of successful from the perspective of we do have some properties in arrears, but it's very similar to previous years. There's about 350 properties in arrears, but that is similar to past years. From the fire department perspective, 5 recruits passed their probation and are working on the 1001 program, so that's great news. The overhead door replacement project is completed. They also did some work at the Child Care Center open house. So they were there showing off the fire truck and also talking about safety. As far as new businesses, 777 Lounge and Club Limited is now open. That's just within the Indian Flame restaurant, where it hasn't opened. They got a business license.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's close. Mulik's Handmade Ice Cream is replacing Scoopsies. So that's a change. We continue to work on the water treatment plant. So yeah, we're bringing in a pilot plant that actually tests and tries treating the water. So it's kind of a year-long pilot project. So that's starting to be underway probably within the next couple of weeks here. We all know the 74th Street project. Pavement looks pretty nice. Still doing some work on Magnolia. We're starting the flood remediation project, about $550,000. So H&M is starting that. So that was done with some grant funding, or is going to be done with some grant funding. That's to you may recall, probably about a year, 2 years ago, we had a flood report presented to council and identified several areas that we can do some pre-work on to reduce damage to our infrastructure if we made some modifications. So this money, again, grant money, is going towards some of those projects. We're continuing to work on the BC recycle audit. Not so great news. We got another report card back, and we're still, I think this was either 14 or 15%, and what's required is 5%. So we have a lot of work to do. I just want to put out another reminder out there. No clothing, no books, no metal, glass. Those are the big ones that seem to be making their way into the recycle bin. So please don't put that in. We are subject to fines if this doesn't improve. We're gonna start going into the garbages here, hopefully maybe this week or next week. Today, so we had staff rummaging in garbage. Important job. We'll be leaving, for those that didn't pass the quick audit, we'll leave a kind of a report card indicating to the individual what they've done wrong, and unfortunately we're going to keep visiting you until you pass. So that's going on. Do you have a question, or you?
Yeah, I do have a question about the audits. Do we know how other municipalities do?
So my understanding is as soon as you start getting into that fail zone, you get identified. So so is there other municipalities? I do know others do. Yes, I do know there's a municipality just to the north of us that received a $50,000 fine. So you know, that's not their job. They don't want to do that type of thing, much like the town. You want to educate, get behaviors to change. So we're going to give it all we got here. We're going to take out more advertising and try to get people to change their behaviors. I think one of the positive things is when people are recycling, they think they're doing the right thing. So these are people not, you know, they think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. So we just, they got a good outlook on things. They just maybe need a little education. Does that answer? I don't know how many. I assume, and we can check more into it, like anything else, they only have so many staff, so they probably pick, so you know, as soon as you get into that bad list, they probably pick so many of them and do kind of a prioritization. That's as far as other things, just want to talk about the water restrictions. Just again, a reminder, we think we've got half decent compliance out there. It's the 3-zone system, not odd even, so please consider that. And the last thing, which just happened yesterday with the windstorm, we do know that we had some broken branches, that type of thing. But the one more significant is Desert Park. We had some damage to the building. There is some damage to the structure itself. We are closing the facility. there definitely appears to be some additional damage there with regards to water damage, and so we don't know how long the facility is gonna be closed, but we're gonna have to bring in a building inspector slash engineers to actually take a look at the building. So we're unsure as to how long that facility is going to be closed for. And I shouldn't have ended on such a bleak note, but that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And could we please have a motion to receive the CEO report for information? Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. We will now go on to council reports. Councillor Poderica.
Thank you, Worship. July 1st, of course, attended Cherry Fiesta Fair one here. Always a great event. Again, thanks to Cities Festival Society, as well as our own staff and the other volunteers in the community, as well as emergency services overall. It's always our biggest event of the year, significant turnout, and that does obviously put pressure on all our services. And add in a hospital closure as well at the same time, and multiple days since. Gets a little frustrating, but overall, July 1st was a great week and a good start to summer. On the 4th, attended a meeting with the CS Airport committee with the CAO. On the 5th, attended the Suze Child Care Center's spring refresh or reveal. They've done a lot of work in the facility the last couple of months here, both inside and outside, and revamping their space. And then, of course, on the 8th, I had the opportunity with council to meet with Mr. Anderson. Discuss issues of municipal concern within the community, and kind of a kickstart to our discussions going into UBCM. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Councillor King.
As Councillor Poderica said, we all attended a meeting with Minister Anderson. I think it was very well received, and we hope to do some more discussion at UBCM.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. July 1st, pancake breakfast, parade, cut the cake, didn't watch the fireworks. Then July 7th had Trails of the Okanagan meeting, and then July 8th, Minister Anderson with the rest of the council.
Thank you. Councillor Chong.
Ditto on a lot of it. Yeah, Mr. Anderson, July 8th, it was an absolute pleasure, and again, setting up that groundwork for all the advocacy that we do for the town during UBCM in a few months. Man, the barbecue at Suze Child Care Center refresh. It's always great to see a facility just, all the work they do is just amazing, and all the kids running around. And I do apologize, I did bring my daughter, and she was buck naked in like 5 minutes because it had some water slides and all that going on. So now, yeah, July 1st, pancake breakfast. Thank you, Rotary. Parade, it was a hot one. No, just amazing. Fireworks were great. Thank you to all the volunteers and staff and everyone. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. So a couple of things. Sorry. What? You better, maybe. I wondered. Did you?
So
are you
sorry, Your
deliberate-
Worship, there was
Yeah.
one item I did want to give the community an update on, and
go
your
ahead.
news is usually better than mine. So this isn't too bad. I just wanted to give an update on the water meter project and people for complying. We're basically about 75% there. The vast majority of the in-the-house installs are completed. We have approximately 30 to 40 properties that are more difficult jobs. So we're using local plumbers to actually do those more difficult jobs. We have still about 25 people we can't get a hold of. So there's a lot of people that own property in town that don't live here. And so we're working with those. I'm sure when we can get a hold of them, I don't think they're going to be, refusals, that type of thing, but we have those. And then we have about just a handful of those that are not that happy with water meters, but refusing. So we're gonna have to take some steps there to, ultimately put meters on these, and likely will be pit meters. And I just want to emphasize that it's been communicated to them that if there is a refusal, we'll do a pit meter and they will be, have to make up for the cost difference between the in-house and pit meter installation. So the pit meters, there are more than expected. Council was given that update previously, and we're probably around 500 pit meters. And we're down to about probably 400-ish in that range. So it is going to take us a few more months to do the pits. We can't give a definitive date because we're using other contractors to do the excavation. They know it's a higher priority. So as they have staff available, they may put more crews on it or fewer crews. But right now, we're expecting to go close to year end on most of the pit meters. So again, I just want to thank the public for cooperating. I know this is a change in how we're doing things, but for the most part, the vast majority of people are warm and inviting and knowing that, you know, we have to change. And I can't emphasize enough, you know, this is an attempt to conserve water, so people are aware of how much water they're using. But the big thing that we talked about earlier today is with regards to grants and having water conservation measures such as water meters is the component to getting grants, and we all know how bad we need grants. So sorry, Mayor, I forgot about that in my update, but wanted to just
Okay,
give that update.
go ahead, Councillor
Since you
Kane.
mentioned water meters, are the vaults the last on the list or is there any update on the vaults?
Yeah, so the vaults are last. I think there's 10. I think positive news on the vault side because the group has been working pretty hard on them because they are expensive. They found some ways to reduce those costs. So that's, I think, yeah, that's some good news.
Go ahead.
Thank you. You mentioned that there were a handful of properties that are against water meters. And obviously the reasons why we would install a pit meter as opposed to in-house would be, if I recall correctly, and jump in, what if I'm incorrect, but if there is a line that splits the irrigation into in-house, we want to put a meter onto the actual line so that we actually record both irrigation and domestic water use. So that's one of the cases. The other case is if it is physically impossible to install an in-house water meter. And those are currently the only two reasons why one would not have an in-house meter.
That is correct, and I think you've mentioned previously on stratas, that type of thing.
Yes.
But yes, on a typical residential house, you are correct.
And how many of these properties are there that are quite staunchly resistant?
So we know there's 2 that are in the absolute no, that we're going to be proceeding with pits on, and there's about 10 that have really said no, but we're giving them one last letter to say either yes, we'll do an in-house, or we're going to be doing the pit meter. So we're talking less than 0.5%. So I think that's pretty decent compliance with the project, the way it started out. I mean, there has been a lot of work, a lot of education. I've really got to give a significant kudos to the staff, you know, both at operations and their frontline staff, and also True Consulting for working through, I think, a lot of the reservations that some people have had. So it's been a really long haul with some, but I think with lots of work, we've convinced this is the way that things are, and is the way that, you know, most municipalities have moved. And if they haven't moved here, they are going to, because you're not going to get grants on your system if you don't do things like this. So want to stay on the positive side as far as the those that have been cooperative and allowed this project to move forward as smoothly as possible, but there have been hiccups.
And with those properties that have been challenging, what is usually the reasoning?
I think mostly I'm hearing. I mean, we've had some people just against water metering to begin with. Some people don't want people within their homes. We did have one that came forward to council indicating a medical condition. So that's roughly what I think I've heard. Has anybody heard anything else?
Can I ask, how many people have, our recommendation is an inside meter and they have chosen not to do that and they've chosen to go with the pit meter, but they have agreed to pay for it? Are there a few of those as well?
Your
So they
worship,
make that choice?
right now we have two. So I think, and I also want to be clear, like if we had unlimited funds, I think we'd like pits all the way through. It's, it's, I think when we ever have to change them or that type of thing, it'd be easier just to go into the pit. But it's just the financial cost is basically about at least 6-7 times more. And so trying to balance the needs of ratepayers, balance our needs with grant funding. I think the process that was followed was, as good as we could do with the funding that we have and the feedback that we're receiving from homeowners and property taxpayers and utility payers. So again, I think it's the best approach possible. Is it ideal? No, but I think it's the best that we could do with the limited financial capacity that we do have. So
And the whole pit metering process has taken quite a bit longer and cost us quite a bit more. To be fair, through the whole procedure, we had a budget for it, and I know that we have had to go over that, and so we need to be very careful. We agree it's really important for us to know how we're spending our water, how much we're dealing, how much it's costing us, and we just have to understand that the entire province at this point is in a drought situation, and it was just on the Vancouver News that everybody in the province is having to try and use less water. That's for sure. So thank you for always bringing us back these reports.
So there is that one case, and it has been on my mind, it's been bugging me, with the medical condition. I believe it was Mr. Marty, and with regard to electromagnetic hypersensitivity. So with anything that is council related, I always try to take an objective stance and research both sides. So as of our current knowledge, there is no there's no acceptable diagnostic criteria or clinical guidelines that can diagnose EHS, which is a challenge for us. Right? We can't give an exemption for a condition that we cannot prove. On the other hand, it wasn't that long ago when we thought smoking was good for your health. And there are changes in technologies or research that can show new information, which is a challenge with this case. Because yes, right now we can't prove EHS or the health detriments. But what if in 5-10 years turns out, yeah, EHS is real and has some serious issues for some individuals, then it feels like we've kind of failed in our duty in that case. Of course, it's kind of, can't think of every worst case scenario. I suppose my question to council is, what is our appetite on a potential exemption or even directing staff towards working on an exemption for this one individual?
Can I say something here? I certainly understand, and I absolutely appreciate the work that you did, Councillor Chong, in researching this. If we had a medical note from a doctor or someone, would that affect how we could move forward on this? Do we know that? Has it ever happened? And if so, would that be an option for Mr. Marty? And he said no when it was asked when he was here. But if he has symptoms that can be treated, obviously, he has to likely talk to a medical professional to get some help when necessary. I'm wondering if a note from someone might be helpful to us. And I'm not sure whether that has happened in other places or not.
Your worship, I think that was one of the questions that was asked of delegation, whether they could get a doctor's note, and the individual said no. But I think, you know, if information came forward like that, we would still come forward to council and see what potentially could be done. I guess one of the issues on the administration side is whenever there's an exception to a process, it continues, and it's not just the one. It's what happens then if an individual moves or somebody says the same thing, and maybe then there's 10 more. And what do we have to actually say, well, we are making this decision and we're going to change along the way. So, you know, 6 months down the road, maybe we got to change 20 of them or 30 of them. And so it's really tough to do exceptions because, again, it's the billing process. Now, one of the reasons going to the ATI system is it's pretty much, well, it's not even a hit of a button. It's done continually. And as soon as you start having exceptions to the rule, errors can happen. You have staff turnover. When you establish rates and rate bylaws, you have to consider something else. How is that going to be done? Is it a 10% premium, 20%, 30% premium? So it's, whenever you do exceptions, it costs more. And I know it sounds really, really cold, but it's exceptions are difficult, and like I say, and they're ongoing, and circumstances change, people move. If the individual is then to move out of that house, so we can go back and change whatever we've done, or it just never ends.
Totally understand the issues surrounding this. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. Would Neptune not have ran into this kind of stuff before? Would they, if we talk to them, would they say this happened in this town or this town?
Yes.
I wonder how the other towns.
I know of one personally, and I believe it was Neptune is actually installing them. The individual actually went to court to try to stop the process. They ultimately, the court ruled in the community's favor, and they continued with the meters. So I know of that one specific situation. It was in a fairly large community. The community kept with the process. The individual took the community to court, and the judge ruled in favor of the municipality and proceeding with the ATI meter. So I am certain that there's going to be exceptions out there. I'm certain that there's probably some municipality that established a program, because there's always the exceptions. But and that is something if council wants to, it's your prerogative to do that. It's just knowing with all the things we're not doing, and there's a long list which we talk about sometimes at the budget process or when issues occur. You know, we can always fix things if we had more staff. Where do we want to put their limited resources? And say if it's just one and it's over and it's done, it's not so bad. But if it's ongoing, it's always something to worry about. If, you know, if the town's gonna go out and read the meter, you have to have staff available, or you then you have people on vacation or sick, and you know, it goes on and on. If you change a process where we have to put it into a manual process, yeah, I'm not trying to sound cold, but realistically, there's no free money. It's, if you make an exception to something and there's increased costs associated with that decision, it's everybody else picking them up. So I think it's really important for council to consider, you know, if you're going to do exceptions, it's not free. Somebody else has to pick up that dime.
Thank you. Continues to be a very difficult decision to make, but I think we have to leave it for now. We still have 6 months where we're dealing with this, so I think we need to move on. And so I will talk about some of the things that I have done in the last couple of weeks. And what's on July the 9th, I was on a BC government EMCR, Emergency Management Climate Readiness, review with the province, river forecast, wildfires, and so on. And it was an overview of of the province. We don't seem to have the same concerns, or we didn't on that date, that some of the rest of the province did. But there is a level 3 in the Okanagan drought. It increased from a level 2 quite recently. And of course, there are fires. And I know that there are people around here that were quite concerned about the fires. They're not that close to us, but there are 3 of them. One is the August Lake fire, which is over in Area H, which is basically rural Princeton. And they're on evacuation alert. It's 14 hectares and they're watching. I think it's on the Hope Princeton somewhere near Eastgate. There's Placer Creek, which is also in Area H. They're on an alert, and that's the one that's fairly close to the mine. And there's Young Creek, which is basically, for people around here know, so close to the Cathedral Lakes. And they're on an evacuation alert. And that's Area G, which is west of Keremeos. So around Headley and up in the hills there. So those are the 3 that are causing the concerns over here. And it was the winds and that was bringing the smoke from those fires over to Osoyoos and Oliver the other day. So it's tricky because sometimes you smell the smoke and you think, oh dear, it must be close, but it's not that close, but definitely it's a concern, and they're all being handled by the Emergency Operations Center from the regional district. And as a director, I get notifications probably 2 or 3 times a day on what the status is. So and I know staff would too. On June the 26th, I went to GRAD, and I brought greetings on behalf of the town. I also presented 3 awards, $1,500 awards to graduates, and I did another one for Helen Ritchie to one of the grads that she had asked me to do. I was absolutely amazed. I think there were 42 graduates, and there was $102,000 in bursaries that were given out, which is an all-time record. Some of the people that were there, some of the graduates got 6, 8, 9 awards. And it was pretty amazing to see, and they were quite appreciative. Although I don't know whether we've had any thank you cards from the 3 that the town gave, and I think that is, I'm just saying it out there, I think that's very, very important to thank people. So I'm hoping those will be forthcoming. On June the 28th, which was a Saturday, the mayor of Oroville invited me to come down to the farmers market that was held at a park down there, because they were celebrating Canada Day. And I went down there. They announced me on the loudspeaker. People came up and shook my hands. I took a whole bunch of Canadian flags down, and they were so appreciative of it. And they, all wanted to come up and shake my hand and say, how nice it was for Canadians and Americans, cross-border towns, to get together. I was delighted that I had gone. And they were just very happy with it. So at the border, when I explained what I was doing and where I was going, they said, well, there are all kinds of Canadians down there camping this weekend. So many people go down and use the campgrounds. So I know that Oroville appreciates that, because some of their businesses have quite slowed down. However, that was a good thing, and I reported that to the Border Mayors Alliance, that I had done that. On the 30th was a royalty reunion between Kara Burton, who was Mrs. Osoyoos 1992, I think, and we contacted many of the past royalty from 1949 to 2019. There were about 25 that showed up at the museum on the 30th. And I took a picture of them all, and that is the contributed picture in the paper. So that was me that did that one. Several other people took pictures of the 12 or 13 royalty that came and sat on the float. Some of them were there the night before, some of them weren't. And they rode on the Osoyoos Festival Society float. Was just a beautiful float. And they were quite excited, and they had on their banners and their tiaras and everything. So it was a really good reunion, and we've heard from and had pictures sent from lots of them. So that was a positive. And then, of course, Cherry Fiesta. Council was in the parade. They were part of the pancake breakfast. They were part of the opening ceremonies and part of the cake cutting, and really appreciate all of the work that council and staff and the Festival Society do to make this a really good presentation. It was a tad hot, and I had been up at 6:30 in the morning putting up no parking signs and cones on Main Street. So about 3 o'clock, I went home and slept for 2.5 hours, which I needed. So then I was at, of course, that was Cherry Fiesta. July the 4th was RDOS, which is our regular meeting. And we met Minister Anderson on July the 8th. And those are all of the things that I've done in the past little while. And it's been a busy time, but we appreciate the fact that we need to conserve water for sure, because we haven't got very much water right now. It doesn't look like there's any rain in the forecast right now, so we need to be really careful of it. And I pray for water quite often, and I think that people need to be really careful about being out in the sun. It's pretty hot, and they need to make sure that they're keeping hydrated. Go to cooling centers. There are some around. Certainly the Sonora Center and our library are some, and you can certainly go down to the lake and swim in there. We're lucky that we have that. So that's my report, and I will now go to the in-camera section. That pursuant to section 91 of the Community Charter, a part of the council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to one or more of the following. Section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality. And 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. Could I have a motion to go in camera, please? Councillor Poderica, Councillor Bennett, all in favor.